Mons, Belgium, August the 23rd, 1914. The 1st Battalion Middlesex Regiment is holding a canal line against the German First Army. The Germans have artillery, they have numbers, and they have the finest infantry in Europe, bearing down on a British force outnumbered roughly 3-1. What they do not have is any framework for understanding what is about to happen to them. The British rifles open up, not in volleys, in individual rapid fire, every man working his bolt as fast as his hands will allow, 10 rounds in the magazine, thumb and forefinger never releasing the bolt handle, trigger pulled by the middle finger, 1 round downrange every 2 seconds from every man in the line. The German regimental histories record that they encountered machine gun fire. There were no machine guns. There were riflemen with Lee-Enfields, trained to fire 15 aimed rounds per minute as a minimum standard, doing exactly what they had been trained to do. The Germans who survived Mons had to be told afterward that the devastation had come from individual bolt-action rifles. They did not believe it. 27 years later, on the other side of the same war, the same rifle, updated, refined, simplified for mass production, but mechanically identical in every way that mattered, was being issued to British infantrymen as the standard service weapon. The Germans they would face had learned nothing from Mons that changed the rifle they were about to be shot with. The Lee-Enfield No. 4 Mark I is the story of a bolt-action design so far ahead of everything it competed against that the British Army spent 2 decades trying to improve it and arrived at something that was, in every measurable way, faster. The short magazine Lee-Enfield, the rifle that fought the First World War, entered service in 1907. Its design drew on work by 2 men whose names it carries. James Paris Lee, a Scottish-Canadian engineer, patented the rear-locking bolt system in 1879. The bolt locked at the rear of the receiver rather than the front, as the Mauser system did. This single decision had consequences that rippled through 5 decades of British infantry combat. A rear-locking bolt has a shorter throw than a front-locking bolt. The bolt handle travels a shorter arc between locked and unlocked positions, which means the shooter's hand moves less distance to complete the cycle. The German Carabiner 98 locked at the front. Its bolt throw was longer. A trained German soldier could fire 8 to 10 aimed rounds per minute under ideal conditions. A trained British soldier with a Lee-Enfield fired 15 as the minimum qualifying standard. In a sustained firefight, that arithmetic was lethal. The magazine helped. The Carabiner 98 held 5 rounds in an internal magazine. The Lee-Enfield held 10 in a detachable box magazine, loaded from 2 5-round stripper clips. When one British soldier reloaded twice, his German counterpart was still on his first reload. The problem the War Office faced in the 1920s was not that the short magazine Lee-Enfield was inadequate. It was that the rifle was expensive to manufacture, its sights were considered outdated, and its action, while fast, had tolerances that complicated mass production. The trials for an updated design began almost immediately after the armistice in 1918. What followed was 2 decades of committees, prototypes and modifications. The Mach 5 of 1922 added aperture sights. The Mach 6 of 1926 simplified the furniture. Neither was adopted for mass production. By 1931, the new design was being called the No. 4, and batch trials of 2,500 rifles were underway. The receiver was squared off for easier machining. The barrel was heavier, improving accuracy at range. The sights were redesigned, an aperture rear sight mounted on the receiver rather than a blade sight on the barrel, giving a longer sight radius and faster natural acquisition in low light. The spike bayonet replaced the sword bayonet, which enraged veterans but simplified production enormously. The action remained the Lee bolt, cocking on closing rather than opening, rear-locking lugs, the same 10-round magazine, the same stripper clip loading. The DNA was identical. The No. 4 was officially adopted in November 1939. Mass production did not begin until 1941. The British Expeditionary Force that went to France in 1940 carried the same short magazine Lee-Enfield their fathers had carried at Mons. The number 4 arrived too late for Dunkirk, and just in time for everything that came after. Now, before we get into what the number 4 actually did in combat, if you are following this, hit subscribe. It costs nothing, and it helps the channel grow. Here is what the Mad Minute actually was, because the legend has grown large enough to obscure the reality, and the reality is impressive enough on its own. The formal exercise, practice number 22, in the musketry regulations of 1909, required a rifleman to fire 15 rounds at a second-class figure target at 300 yards, starting with 1 round in the chamber and 4 in the magazine, reloading from his ammunition pouch between shots. 15 rounds in 60 seconds was the minimum passing standard. Most trained soldiers exceeded it. 20 to 30 rounds per minute was achievable by a skilled operator under field conditions. The record was set around 1914 by Sergeant Instructor Snoxall of the Loyal North Lancashire Regiment at the School of Musketry at Hythe. 38 rounds in 60 seconds, all within a 24-inch circle at 300 yards. That record has never been broken. The technique that made it possible was specific. Thumb and forefinger never released the bolt handle. The trigger was pulled by the middle finger. The wrist flicked the bolt through its short rear-locking arc in a continuous motion that a trained man could sustain for the full 60 seconds. The key word is trained. British Army marksmanship doctrine, after the Boer War, emphasized individual accuracy at all rates of fire. A soldier did not receive a passing grade for spraying rounds. He received it for placing them. 38 rounds in 60 seconds into a 24-inch circle at 300 yards is not spray. It is the most controlled, sustained rifle fire ever documented. And it was achieved with a bolt-action service rifle by a man whose name most people cannot spell correctly. It has never been beaten. When German soldiers at Mons reported encountering machine guns, they were not describing confusion. They were describing the gap between what they believed a rifle could do and what a Lee-Enfield in trained hands actually did. Production of the number 4 tells a story of industrial mobilization that deserves more attention than it usually receives. The Royal Small Arms Factory at Enfield, which had developed the weapon, produced none of the wartime rifles. Production was divided among the Royal Ordnance Factory at Fazakerley near Liverpool, the Royal Ordnance Factory at Maltby near Sheffield, and Birmingham Small Arms at Shirley. In early 1941, while America was still officially neutral, the British government contracted with Savage Arms Corporation to build 200,000 rifles at the former Stevens Arms Factory in Chicopee Falls, Massachusetts. The Long Branch Arsenal outside Toronto contributed nearly 1 million rifles. By the end of the war, total production across all facilities reached approximately 4.1 million number 4 rifles. North American production alone exceeded British domestic output. A weapon designed at Enfield had to be manufactured on 2 continents because the country that designed it could not build enough, fast enough to arm the empire it was fighting for. The sniper variant tells a separate story. Selected No. 4 rifles that passed a higher accuracy standard during factory testing were shipped to Holland, and Holland, the famous British sporting gun manufacturer on Bond Street in London. There, gunsmiths who normally fitted Purdy shotguns for aristocratic clients rebedded the actions, fitted wooden cheek pieces, and mounted a number 32 3.5 power telescopic sight in a one-piece mount. The resulting weapon, designated the number 4 Mark I-T, was described by multiple post-war assessments as arguably the finest sniper rifle of the Second World War. Approximately 23,000 were produced by Holland and Holland alone. They remained in British sniper service until the 1960s. The comparison with the German Karabiner 98 requires honest handling. The Karabiner 98 was an exceptionally accurate rifle. Its front-locking Mauser action was inherently stiffer than the Lee system, and many ballisticians argued this stiffness contributed to superior accuracy at very long range. German infantry doctrine emphasized marksmanship at distance, and the Karabiner 98 was well suited to it. What it could not do was cycle as fast. In the close-quarters fighting that characterized most infantry combat in the Second World War, the hedgerows of Normandy, the mountains of Italy, the jungle of Burma, the ability to deliver a second and third aimed shot before an opponent could respond was the difference between winning and losing the individual encounter. A German soldier who missed his first shot had time to work his bolt and aim again before a British soldier with a number 4 had necessarily acquired a new target. The reverse was not true. The Carabiner 98 was a fine weapon that fought 2 world wars and deserves every word of credit it has received. It was simply slower. In infantry combat, slower is the thing you cannot afford to be. Rifleman Lakiman Gurung of the 8th Gurkha Rifles demonstrated what a number 4 and sufficient determination looked like on the night of May the 12th, 1945, on the Irrawaddy River in Burma. His platoon position was attacked before dawn by approximately 200 Japanese soldiers. 2 grenades landed in his trench. He threw both back. The third he grabbed, and it exploded in his hand, blowing away his fingers, his thumb, and most of his right hand. He picked up his rifle with his left hand. For 4 hours, alone, he held his section of the trench, firing left-handed at attackers who came close enough to touch him, reloading between shots, with one hand and his teeth. When his section was relieved at dawn, there were 31 dead Japanese soldiers in front of his position. He was 19 years old. He was awarded the Victoria Cross. The number 4 remained the standard British bolt-action infantry rifle until 1957, when the self-loading rifle replaced it. 17 million Lee-Enfield rifles of all variants were produced between 1895 and 1957. The Canadian Rangers carried them until 2015. The design James Paris Lee patented in 1879 is still being fired in the 21st century by police forces across South Asia. No army ever produced a bolt-action rifle that cycled faster. None. But here is the thing that is easy to miss when you are counting the rounds per minute and mapping the bolt throw. The mad minute made one soldier into something close to a machine gun. It was the answer to a specific problem. How do you make one man, with one rifle, dangerous enough to stop an assault? The British Army spent decades on that question, and the Lee-Enfield was the answer. But the men who fought alongside the number 4 knew that somewhere behind the section, dug into a position they could not see and would never visit, there was another weapon that did not need a mad minute. It did not need 38 rounds in 60 seconds. It did not need a trained rifleman to keep his thumb and forefinger on the bolt handle. It just needed water and ammunition and someone to feed the belt. A single Lee-Enfield in trained hands could put down 38 rounds in a minute and stop an assault cold. A Vickers gun, given water and ammunition, could put down 10,000 rounds in an hour, and do it the hour after that, and the hour after that, for as long as the belt kept coming, without pause, without rest, and without the barrel wearing out. In the next video, that weapon, the Vickers machine gun, the gun that British infantry trusted to keep firing for days without stopping, the gun that changed what sustained fire meant, and the gun that shared a trench, a war, and a generation with every man who ever worked a Lee-Enfield bolt. 2 weapons, 1 army, one story that only makes sense when you see both of them together.